Hello, class, and welcome to my peer presentation, where I will be presenting you guys with some of the evidence regarding the concentration of nutrients in breast milk and how that is affected by vegan and vegetarian diets compared to most typical omnivore diets. So next slide. Okay, so vegan and vegetarian diets are two popular diets that are also growing in popularity. They have been shown to have multiple benefits in terms of cardiovascular health, metabolic health, cancer risk, and there's multiple reasons people choose to pursue and follow these diets. However, there is some concern that knowing that vegans and vegetarians often are not getting enough B12, and also because they're not consuming fish, that they're also potentially not getting enough DHA, type of omega-3 fatty acid in their diet. And because of this, a couple of countries have actually outlawed women that follow vegan and vegetarian diets from giving their breast milk to the donor banks, because there's a concern that if women aren't getting enough B12 or DHA or potentially other nutrients, that this will have a trickle-down effect in terms of the milk, and that the infants receiving the donor milk will also not be getting enough B12 and DHA, which could have negative consequences. And so there's many nutrients. Specifically, we're going to look at B12 and DHA because they come up the most and are some of the most significant. Sorry, one second. Breast milk and maternal diets. Basically, it's quite impressive, actually. A mother's milk is pretty resistant to nutrient deficiencies and subpar intake, at least in the short term. But if you do expose the mothers to these nutrient deficiencies and subcaloric intake for long periods of time, it can have negative consequences in the milk. But the initial resistance to a change in the milk is actually quite impressive. And some of the main nutrients that are of concern, like before that I mentioned for vegan and vegetarian diets, and for the infant through milk, are B12, but also calcium, selenium, zinc, iodine, and then also the DHA. And so looking at B12 and DHA, B12, some of the consequences of an infant, a neonate, not getting enough can be improper cognitive development because it affects that central nervous system, failure to thrive, blood cell problems, development problems, and vision problems. It is quite very important for the development of the central nervous system of the infant and the brain, and everything, really. And similar issues arise for DHA as well. Some of these also include stunted growth, cognitive delay, and actually a higher infant mortality and a higher odds of developing type 1 diabetes later in their life. So looking at some of the studies regarding nutrient profile of vegan and vegetarian mother's milk, Perrin et al. Did a study analyzing the DHA levels. And so 74 lactating women were used for this study and pretty much evenly split up, 26, 22, 26. They weren't split up. They were originally, these people were pursuing that diet anyway. And milk samples from each of these mothers were collected and the fatty acids were measured. And according to this study, there was no significant difference in the DHA levels of these mothers' milk. Basically, yeah, you had roughly 2.3% vegans, 1.5% vegetarians, percentages of the total fatty acids. Sorry. But what was actually interesting is most of the mothers, though all similar, could probably use an increase through either supplementation or diet of DHA because they were all subpar levels. But there was no significant difference between the 3 diet types for DHA. Another study, this time regarding B12, Dr. Pollack, and him and his colleagues analyzed B12 levels in breast milk according to the different dietary patterns. And these were 74 milk samples, 26, 22, 26. And there was a prevalence of low B12, but it was not significant between the different dietary patterns. Roughly 19% for vegans, 18 for vegetarians, and 15 for non-vegetarians. So you can see there was a very slight difference, but it was indeed not significant. And at roughly 20%, having subpar levels is definitely not ideal. And so actually from these last 2 studies, we see there is no difference, but all types of mothers could probably afford more B12 and DHA. And third nutrient looked at is actually taurine, which is a type of amino acid. This amino acid is only found preformed in animal products, and it is also essential to the development of the neonate. It has also cognitive effects, or important for cognitive development. So Kim et al. Looked at Korean mothers and how their milk was affected by intake based on the diet. And this actually did find a significantly lower level in the lacto-ovo-vegetarians. And the impact of taurine deficiency on neonates has not been quite as thoroughly studied as DHA and B12. It doesn't seem to be quite as devastating, but still important and significant. And this should probably be evaluated whether supplementation is needed. And also this study is still looking at lacto-ovo-vegetarians. So potentially in vegans, there's even a more significant difference in the milk concentrations of taurine. And there's a handful of other nutrients. Actually, vegan milk had higher selenium and overall omega-3s, but this is including plant omega-3s like ALA, and these are not efficiently turned into DHA. But overall, there were more omega-3s. And also, this wasn't quite the purview of this study, but there were lower contaminants in the vegan milk as well, organochlorine pesticides and polychlorinated biphenols. And yeah, I don't know too much about these 2 contaminants, but this would be interesting for further research. And overall, fat and protein were not different. Again, this is looking at total fat and total protein. The taurine levels were significantly different. It's a specific amino acid. Some of the fat profiles differed as well. In terms of, I think vegan mothers had slightly higher monounsaturated fats. But again, we looked at DHA, which were similar. And also, all the minerals evaluated were also not significantly different. Iron, copper, zinc, calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium. And however, there were some studies that still, despite this information, they did recommend omega-3 and or DHA and B12 supplementation, which I think it is at this point in time, it's probably better to be safe than sorry, and seeing that some of the mothers were deficient in these regardless, even if it didn't impact the breast milk. Um, Again, B12 is typically is recommended for all vegans and vegetarians, so they should be supplementing that anyways. And DHA also theoretically seems like it could possibly be low. So better safe than sorry. Supplement both of these. And so it has, it has been shown that vegan diets can be adequate for lactating women if sufficient meal plans and supplementation are provided. And this, the impact of this is significant. I guess countries like Switzerland and Germany, and potentially maybe Poland as well, should reevaluate what types of milk, the diet types of the women they're receiving are allowed, and potentially reallow vegans to donate. Here are my references, and that's the end of my presentation.